Welcome back to the $2 Film Club. Today we are, this feels like an interesting time for this episode to come out given the recent news about Netflix and Warner Brothers and the fate of theatrical releases. Because Wake Up Dead Man just dropped on Netflix literally yesterday. It did get a short theatrical release, I think, like last or like towards the end of November.
Well, they
November.
extended it actually too. I
Oh,
saw
they
when I
did.
was on the walk. Yeah, like they pushed like I think 500 theaters are still
Damn,
showing it for the next week or something. So
nice. But yeah, so we figured we would talk about the first in this now trilogy of Knives Out films, written and directed by Ryan Johnson. First being 2019's Knives Out, and the sequel 2022's Glass Onion, a Knives Out mystery.
I really don't know what to say about it because like I feel like the world, the theaters, Netflix, film, everything was so much different when Knives Out first released compared to the next two. And I also want to ask, I'm quite frankly confused. Is Wake Up Dead Man a Knives Out story or just Wake Up Dead Man? Because I've seen both titles and I don't know if they're trying to keep in theme of a Knives Out story, which I really hope they drop because I think it's the dumbest fucking like subtitle for a movie. Like a
Um,
Glass Onion, a Knives Out story sounds so stupid. I'm sorry.
I mean, I
Like
know like on the posters, Wake Up Dead Man, like it still says below it like a Knives Out mystery, but I don't think it's like an official subtitle for as far as I'm aware. I know Glass Onion on the
it's like an official one in
yeah, like
Glass Onion.
on the Wikipedia it says Glass Onion, a Knives Out mystery. I don't hate it. Like obviously Knives Out is kind of what started it, and they want people to know like, oh, this is related to that. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah, like you said, we you and I ended up watching Wake Up Dead Man, um, like yesterday and early morning today. So we're probably going to talk about that. So spoilers ahead for Wake Up Dead Man. If you have not seen it, I think you and me should try to keep our
I was
thoughts
about to
about
say,
Wake Up Dead Man till the end of the episode, just to like,
yeah, I was about to say, do we just want to kind of bunch the first two together
yeah,
because then I think it'd be easier to talk about Wake Up Dead Man and then just refer to the last two movies when talking about that rather than like just going back and forth because of how like new Wake Up
yeah,
Dead Man is.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, Wake Up Dead Man takes on a like a different tone compared to the other two, so I feel like that's going to be a little easier to sort of start with the first two as like their own thing. But anyways, yeah, obviously Knives Out came out
2019.
like pretty much the start of the pandemic, I want to say, or maybe like right before it.
No, it was like a few. So it premiered at Toronto International Film Festival in September of 2019, and then released Thanksgiving of the same year. And I remember that because this is pre Netflix. So I just remember hearing a lot of the buzz coming out of this movie, out of Toronto. And specifically, I feel like everyone, like, I'll say this I think I view Knives Out much differently in terms of the next two films. And I think it starts with the cast. And I thought about this while watching Knives Out and why I thought they were so good, not only just now, but like back when this came out. But everyone in Knives Out just had like a huge wave of fame hit them all at the same time in this movie. I mean, you have Michael Shannon, um, Daniel Craig. You have like a few of the staples, Jamie Lee Curtis, but like you have Don Johnson coming into this, Tony Collette, who is just coming off of Hereditary, which was I knew her before, but I think that was her big splash into like the film nerdy world, where I think a lot of people know who she is now. And then you have Catherine Langford, who's coming off of 13 Reasons Why, which became the biggest Netflix show unironically when it premiered, which I do find funny. It had Lakeith Stanfield. like a lot of names who were just like becoming big, and a lot of people that I think people wanted to see. I mean, Jamie Lee Curtis was coming back in the Halloween films. Like, she was just having a reemergence in her career. So it's really interesting seeing this film and going back to it and comparing it to these next two, because wow, I fucking love Knives Out, this first one. I don't say films are perfect often, but you take out the kid from it in this, and I think this is a perfect film. I'll stand by
Do you
that.
mean that in terms of like performance or
No, I
writing?
just mean as a character as a whole. Like,
Yeah.
his character doesn't add anything, the performance doesn't do anything. He's generally not really in the film, and is only in the movie to set up that one little plot convenience where, or the one little adding the clue to the whole mystery of he's in the bathroom and listens to Ransom and his grandfather's fight, and
Mm.
that's really the only use he has, other than being a ultra alt right wing conservative kid troll on Twitter. Like, this film does that version of all the characters much better than the next two, I think, because I definitely think Glass Onion attempts to take what we would consider in the current day. And I say current day because I think 2018, 2019, pre-pandemic, and 2022 coming, I don't want to say post-pandemic, but just
It was
fresh
like
out of,
mid
yeah, just like
pandemic.
kind of mid to the endish of the pandemic. The world was very different. And so I think the way Ryan Johnson tried to portray the different worlds of characters is really interesting. Whether I think it worked as well in Glass Onion as I do in Knives Out, I don't think so. But also, like, I don't know. I feel like I've just been gloating it too long. I'll give your opinion, Leo. I'm sorry, bro. I just love this film so much.
No, I mean I agree with most of what you said. I obviously you and me have differing opinions on the last two. We'll get into that, but um I think both of us can agree that the last two aren't as good as the first one. How much so, like how much the drop off is up for debate between you and me. But it was interesting because I remember seeing like I think I saw the teaser trailer and I wasn't exactly interested because I don't. These movies are kind of hard to market because so much of it is trying to hide kind of what the movie's actually about. But then when you watch it, like it's such a curveball in terms of like how the plot switches up everything on you like so quickly that it kind of ends up working. But I do think a lot of like what makes Knives Out so special is the cast and the way that the characters are written. And like, yeah, even though the dude from It isn't as strong of a character compared to everyone else in this movie, I still think it's not as kind of frustrating as the other two. And not that I'm saying that the other two are particularly that bad in comparison, but there's characters in both of the sequels that really don't add anything and really could have just been left out of the movie altogether. Which says something because in Knives Out, all of the characters, even like the more like side unimportant characters, they still feel kind of important and they have interesting personalities. Where in the sequels, I feel like sometimes it can feel more like caricatures than really like nuanced, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree, and I think to add to your point, a reason why I think that is how you set up the film and the characters themselves. And I remember saying this to you yesterday when we had lunch, and I was just saying how Knives Out is just really good in the sense it gets you right into what's happening. It gives you all the information you just need to know without like going into detail. And then the next scene is just an interrogation of all of the family members. And this is where I think the film is so not only brilliantly written, but directed. And this is where I just think everything in a film just comes together perfectly, where every part of the film is kind of giving an indication to the audience about who the character is, specifically how they view these specific family members and how they view themselves. all through the dialogue, the way they say the dialogue, and the way they act to like Lakeith Sutherland, Benoit Blanc, like all the detectives asking them these questions, and it's just really, really interesting. Because I just remember getting hooked up in which one was it? Jamie Lee Curtis and Don Johnson, because they play the brother sister Drysdale, Linda and Richard, and I just find their relationship really interesting and unique, simply in the fact because I feel like there's so much of their father of the side we didn't see, because we just see the old bitter, not bitter, but the old like laid back, not really caring, you know what, he's given up on his family version that we've never gotten to see. And so you get these little bits of who they are and who they were and how they view everyone. Just I just love the way it's all done, and the editing is absolutely fantastic in this film too.
Yeah, obviously the first film, like that first 30 minutes of establishing the characters and establishing sort of the main mystery is pretty much, I don't know, I really do want to say perfect because you know, one of the things that I don't particularly like about the sequels is how it sets up the main conflict. And it's not as annoying in Glass Onion, but it's still kind of there in that it doesn't really start with anything. I don't know. I don't know how else to explain this, but like at the beginning of Knives Out, the murder is front and center, and it kind of feels like the other two, in trying to be like self-aware and subvert expectations, doesn't start with like the murder stuff. And this is something that you really feel in Wake Up Dead Man that we'll get to like later. But this one, it's just all like front and center. It's very quick and concise. The man is dead. um they're being called in to uh be asked additional questions, and then you just get this long but interesting interrogation scene where Benoit's in the corner or in the background, and he's not front and center, and we're seeing the shifting, and this is where the editing comes in terms of like us seeing the shifting perspectives of how the family members see themselves, and then we immediately get into who they really are in relationship to the others. And that was something that was always interesting to me, like right off the bat. Like even when I first saw this, I was like, "Oh, this is interesting," because you know we're getting to know the characters in a much more like intimate way than you normally would while watching a movie, because the movie is telling us like, this is who these characters think they are, and this is how they actually act towards everyone else. And then it's also about sort of unraveling the like like the central lies that define all of the characters. Like you have, and it's all done in relationship to like Benoit eventually coming in and figuring out like the last kind of moments in conversation that they had with Harlan, and how they're not really telling the truth about it. And I don't know, I really liked that. It was really interesting right off the bat, and it kept me compelled and invested. And then the movie's not even done because it still does the same thing with our actual main character. And this is really what I think makes the movie work overall, because we have all of that establishing stuff, and being like, oh, this is what the mystery is. We're trying to figure out what happened with this man's death, why Benoit's here. And then we have just like, I like that Marta's introduction is a lot more subtle in us sort of like actually following her as she goes throughout like some of her routine at home, and then she comes in and she is interacting with the family and whatnot, and then we finally get to see what really happened with the last thing that the last conversation that she had with Harlan, and how just this movie really pulls the rug out from under you in terms of shifting focus on like, oh, this isn't really a who done it. Now it's just about Marta trying to like throw everyone off her trail. And it's just such an ingenious way of writing this movie because, there's a formula to these things and you kind of can tell where mystery films and stuff like this are going. And I just think the stakes feel more personal and more real in this one because of the way that it goes about writing her central conflict.
Yeah, I like that last point you touched on because it's a point in Glass Onion that really makes me kind of dislike the ending of that film. I'll get into it when we get to that, but I just want to touch on the rest of the characters and how going back to your point, and none of them really ever feel wasted, and just the scene at the end when Catherine Langford, Meg, Joni's daughter, calls Marta and like kind of does like the little fake trickery, like how you doing, trying to comfort her, saying I'll always be there for you. But then the film just does this great thing where as the film unravels, it just slowly teaches all of us that all of them are just the same, doing things differently and not really caring about one another. And so I think that's where I really love it because just when you think there's someone on Marta's side that isn't like her family or Benoit Blanc, you kind of get that crushed from you. And Tony Collette, I know people say she's great in Hereditary, but I'd say she's arguably even better in this movie. She plays such that thin line of pretending to be serious to get what she wants so fucking well that I genuinely almost believe her every time she says it. And I know she's lying to them. And I think that's what the brilliance of this film is because when you do get to that halfway point, it's just really interesting that Ryan Johnson flips the script and has you wonder what the true mystery of the film is after telling you what you think the mystery should be. Because the whole time isn't how Harlan died. They told you the entire time that he killed himself. There's no lie. And I think that's the beauty in this is the film is indirectly leading you away from something it's telling you. Like the film tells you right from the get go, it's ransom. The film doesn't hide it. There's so many clues to tell you that it's ransom. The grandmother tells you it's ransom. The fighting, like it's so well done that when you do get to that, like, oh, he did kill himself, it kind of makes you unlayer how you view all of these characters. And then they lead you into the scene with Marta and Ransom where they're eating lunch. And I really like the scene between the two of them talking over lunch because while, like, Ransom has, like, his devilish tactics to try and still get the money from Marta, outside of like being the quote unquote mastermind behind all this, I think the way Chris Evans plays it is really well done because it kind of strips away everything you thought you knew about the character being this really angry, manipulative man. Which I gotta say, his first scene when they do read the will, probably one of the best fucking scenes I've ever watched. It just never gets old. It's just always funny, and I think that's another thing for this film is all the characters just hit their marks on in terms of like the witty banter. Like I don't know how else to put it because everyone is just so good at it feels like The Bear. Have you seen that show? Which
No.
is which I unironically has Jamie Lee Curtis playing the mother in that show as well. But it's just got that thing where everyone's just got like the perfect timing with their reactions in their verbalization of everything, and it works so well that like I can't even describe why it works because it feels like one of those just synchronous things coming together that just makes the scene just move so fast paced and enjoyable. And it's another scene where you just get such a great idea of like the family's relationship, and the entire time you're just telling yourself you know that whatever happens is not going to be a good thing. Even if they got the money, someone would still be getting fucked over. So when you do get to the end, outside of Marta being her family being illegal and all of that stuff, I think it makes it a satisfying enough conclusion because you know no one in that family is different from each other. And you
Yeah.
see someone who the film tells us hasn't particularly won at life, winning at life for just being a genuine good person. When people tell me they want happier endings, this is kind of the way I view that, where kindness, happiness, someone who gave someone genuine affection and care. Like the fact that Marta cared that much about Harlan when he's got 20 family members there, regardless if they're blood or not, with Joni, Tony Collette's what the her character being like the
Daughter-in-law.
widow, yeah, the widow of like his deceased son. And so there's something beautiful in that fact that at the end I don't think I'll ever feel as satisfied as watching Marta look down over the entire family on the balcony. And I think that's exactly what a film should do. And I just think it hits it on every single cylinder.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I This is the one where I think I definitely enjoy the character dynamics a lot more. It's much better defined, and you get a really good sense of it in like every scene that they're in. And I do like that they're, all the characters, their means are different and kind of their motives, but they're all working towards the same selfish goal of like just taking it all for themselves. And I like the way that this movie portrays them as being a little more deceitful and manipulative, because like it'll show us them sort of being kind of outwardly nice and normal, and then immediately it'll just crumble and you'll just sort of watch as the facade goes along with it. And yeah, I mean that's definitely part of the reason why I think Marta ends up in being so endearing to the audience by the end, on top of the fact that she's just like you said, a really good person. And I really love that line towards the end where Benoit just flat out says like, you're just a really good nurse.
Yeah.
That entire scene is really well done, and that moment particularly where you find out the truth is just so heartbreaking, because you realize that all of that like guilt and effort was kind of just, I feel like saying nothing is has like a negative connotation, but it's just such a gut punch in that like none of this, all of this could have been avoided, and it didn't need to explode like that. But then you kind of think about it like, well, it kind of did, because they all end up proving exactly why Harlan left his entire estate to Marta in the first place. Um, and I love all just the little details involved too. Um, like you have the dogs being really aggressive towards Ransom, and yeah, it wasn't something that I noticed until this last time, but the movie really like hammers down the point of
That it's
how
Ransom,
much
bro.
Ransom is the killer, because the shot that opens the movie is the dogs running towards the camera, and it's just like the movie telling you like these dogs are important and the way that they interact with everyone is important, and you should pay attention to that. um but also just, it always gets me that line that Harlan says about Ransom, referencing like, oh, he wouldn't know the difference between the real thing or a stage prop, and then at the end he mistakenly grabs a stage prop trying to kill Marta, and it doesn't
Yeah.
work. But
It's beautiful bliss.
yeah, I don't know. Everything about this feels so meticulous and well crafted, and even in that moment at the end that you were talking about too, where she's just that's just a masterclass in like staging and blocking. But also, I love that she's drinking out of Harlan's mug that says "My house, my rules," because at that point, it kind of is her house now because of the legal stuff. But obviously, she's gone through this whole ordeal, and it really does feel like she's earned it, and just standing above them for how long they've kind of looked down on her. Um, but yeah, um, you have anything
One
else about Knives Out, or should we
yeah, I
talk
want
about?
to talk about like Daniel Craig in particular because I think he
Oh,
adds a really unique aspect to, I want to say, this film in particular. And we'll talk about it a little bit more in the when we get to the next two in a minute, but I think this is almost as critical of a role. Like, I'm not being hyperbolic when I say this. Like, I'm saying it slowly because I think you're going to think I'm crazy.
I
But
think I know where you're going with this, and I just want to say I 100% agree with you.
where, like, I think him playing Benoit Blanc is as important as, like, fucking Mark Hamill playing Luke Skywalker, bro. Like, that, without Daniel Craig playing Benoit Blanc, I don't think any of this could have worked. He adds just this aura. I don't even know how to describe it to this movie. That anytime the second he pops up on screen, you just know you're in for like something. You don't know what it is at first, and then he just starts firing off all cylinders about why he's like this fucking famed detective. And something that I'm kind of upset about. Every film has a scene in the beginning where they're like, "Oh, you're this guy from this one case." I thought
Oh,
it
and they
would have
can't
been
remember
really,
the details properly.
yeah, but it's always a different case. I wish they would just do something about a really stupid case that everyone just heard of if they weren't gonna do like, weren't you that guy that just like blew up this giant fucking glass onion in the middle of Barbados? Like, like, you know what? I actually was. How'd you hear about that? Like, because like I think that's crazier. Like the fact that they don't mention that guy that fucking figured out a famed writer's murder and then a glass onion blowing up, like that's crazy. And then there's like, oh yeah, you just figured out like this diddly do what little fucking cat case and all. It's just like, that's what you guys heard of this fucking dude. I don't know. That's just my opinion on Daniel Craig because I feel like he's as important to not only this film but this franchise as ever. And I say that because I know you know that that's a point I'm going to bring up in the third film.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, definitely he's a standout in this movie. I mean, I definitely like that in this movie he's not the focus, and I know a lot of the marketing used him as like, oh, this is Daniel Craig, like he had stopped being Bond, and this is kind of like his next big thing, and I definitely think this is a really good move post Bond era for him. But I do really like that this character is like so different from the kind of character that we kind of got used to him playing, but also just in how different he is from like your normal like detective in a murder mystery. Like he's kind of silly in this movie, and I really enjoy that. It makes every scene that he's in really really funny and also really really interesting, because you've kind of got like people in just being like, what the fuck are you doing, what is this, and then you've also got people who are really invested in like his process. And it also just is so interesting watching Marta try to work against him, but he's like so good that there's constantly obstacles coming up that that she's having to like keep up with and shoot down.
But it doesn't matter at the end, which is the funniest part,
Yeah,
which I love.
it is really funny that by the end he's like, yeah, I kind of knew it was you.
I was just playing along because I like that's what I think makes the ending so good too, is that he knew from the start that she was involved because of the blood, but he just knew it wasn't her, and
Yeah,
he was helping her to see how this would all unfold. And like, there's something about the niceness of it all around all of this greed and fortune and backstabbing. Hence, like, the metaphor of Knives Out, which I think this is the only film that I think it works in out of the three. I'll spoil that right now because I don't think it like beats it over the head, but it's also like a very familiar scenario. Like, we're not all a bunch of fucking multi-billionaires because of a book we wrote, right? But we can all like relate to the issues of like our families backstabbing us to get something that helps them out instead of us.
Yeah.
Regardless if there's like 5 or 10, everyone has that one family member. So I think there's a personal level to all this that I think everyone can connect to more than I think they can in Glass Onion.
Mm. I mean, at least in Glass Onion, you have the. I like the dynamic between Benoit and Helen, but also I do like the idea of um, like Helen's relationship with her sister and being out to find out the truth of what happened to her. I don't think I definitely don't think it's as well done as Knives Out, but I still enjoyed that aspect. Um,
Well, I
Speaking of, do
guess,
you want to get into
yeah,
Glass Onion?
let's just get into it because you brought up like I would say I don't want to say issue, but like my biggest question mark. Like, I don't know how to feel about it. And that's like the halfway split where they do like the gotcha moment where Janelle Monet is like playing her sister you never met who's pretending to be her because the real character actually died before the actual movie began. And they try to do this whole thing. And personally, for me, I don't think it works because of how much of the film was already not a murder mystery. That by this point, they just turned the film into a murder mystery that I don't care about. Because,
Mm,
one, by the time we get there, I feel like I'm already so invested in the interpersonal conflict between all of the characters that honestly, I don't need anyone dying for me to be intrigued to see what happens to all of them and what's going on between all their association with oh my
Miles,
god. Yeah, what's his name again?
Miles Braun.
Yeah, Miles Braun. Why can't I find it on Wikipedia? Oh, here. For some reason it disappeared. Yeah. For Miles Braun. And so and then once you get to the ending of the film, I feel like the death feels even less consequential because they don't even really acknowledge it anymore at that point. It becomes more about Andy and less about the actual murder that I think the story should have either revolved around the murder of Duke or the murder of Andy. And I don't think having both of them in there did either service because you speed run through all of Andy's stuff in the second half. And I'll be honest, it feels like a slog because it feels like you as the audience are trying to catch up with an hour and 10 minutes of film you just watched.
Yeah, I mean, I think my biggest gripe is just it takes too long for the murder to actually happen. And I definitely like the opening of us starting with them solving the puzzle and then reintroducing Benoit and sort of what got going on. But then once they get to the island, you've got his perspective on sort of what's going on, but without any of like the key details, if you know what I mean. And I just think that's a little to its detriment because like I said before, or maybe I said this off the podcast, but it kind of feels like we're not progressing through anything as much as we were in like the previous one. And so by the time you get to this to the actual first murder that happens in the movie, which is Duke's death, it does kind of feel like this took a little too long to get going, and you're kind of just left being like, I don't know if this is what I wanted to see. Um, and so yeah, I don't know. I think we could have sped run a little bit of like that first hour and 10 minutes, and or maybe just made some of it a little bit more worthwhile because the whole time you kind of know that someone's gonna die, but then you're kind of just like, you know, at a certain point you just needed to get to it and just like, okay, this is the central murder sort of. I don't hate the whole switch up of them actually being there to investigate Andy's murder. I just feel like it could have happened, like the reveal could have happened sooner in a similar way to which it does in Knives Out. So it doesn't feel like we're spending so much time, waiting so that by the time you get to it, you're like, I feel like we wasted a lot of time with that last hour. Because honestly, in the time that it takes for us to reestablish that, um, Andy's murder and all that stuff, we're knocking at the climax's door. You know what I mean?
Yeah, literally, and then it turns into like this really explosive climax that it's not bad. It just for me it felt very out of place for what I felt like the first movie was trying to be and what I think it wanted the franchise to be. And I think that's where like I'm kind of frustrated with the film.
I don't hate the ending. I think there's definitely like, you
It
know,
it feels
uh
Hollywoody, and I think that's my thing. Where the first one
I don't
didn't.
know. I feel like if we hadn't, and don't get me wrong, like I appreciate the breeziness of them reestablishing the context of sort of what's going on after that like mid shift. But, I feel like if we had not wasted so much time in the first hour and then, maybe had a little bit more breathing room and past the midway point, then maybe it would be a little bit better. But I still think the ending, it feels quite cathartic still, watching Miles sort of, get what he deserves while Helen is sort of having her moment to release all this anger and, sort of get some semblance of like justice for what happened for her sister. And I the one thing that I will say is that this movie is really good at, making the unlikable characters unlikable, so that by the time you get to the end, you do get this sense of satisfaction in watching it all crumble before them and watching Helen and Benoit get what they want.
Okay, so this is where I'm a little conflicted.
Hmm.
The ending I find to be a bit annoying because like you're saying how you enjoy that you get to see Miles kind of have it come towards him for killing Andy and then for having like Benoit and Helen like get the justice for her. I agree with that part. My issue is every character is just equally as bad as Miles. And so to see all of them kind of switch up on him makes me hate them even more and makes me question like, bro, they're just doing exactly what they did to Andy in the first place. So for me it feels less like they're coming to the conclusion of something and more so just rinsing, repeating what they did in the first place to get them there. And it doesn't feel like any of the characters learned anything. And that's where I'm stuck because the character I'm trying to root for, I was only just introduced to 45 minutes ago in a 2.5 hour film.
Yeah, I mean that's fair.
And
I
Benoit Blanc, I always want to root for him, but my issue is he has no connection to anyone here. At least in the first one, it kind of felt like he took on Marta under his wing. Going back to like what I was saying with he knew the entire time, where he knew that he needed to be there to help her. This is just kind of someone coming to him in like desperate need that happens to be a famous person.
mm,
Because at the end of the day, I forgot who it was that said it. I think it was Duke when he was like having his like drunken rant. He's just like, you did the same thing as all of us. We all just piggybacked off him and took his money essentially. And it's just like, yeah, bro, that's exactly what you guys are doing again at the end of this film. And it, I just feel like it's coming back to where we began.
I mean, I think what I took away from it is that they've changed in the sense that not only are they doing something that's going to lead to some sort of form of justice for not only what they did to Andy, but also, Miles murdering her. But I mean, them essentially turning on Edward Norton or Miles, sorry, is, they're kind of renouncing all of the money and the help that they were getting, because once he goes to prison, their reputations are probably going to be ruined, and they're not going to have that financial backing or whatever that they were looking for. And because what's her name's probably Helen's not going to give them anything. Uh, so that's kind of how I see it. Like it's a change in that sort of mentality, if that makes sense. But I
No,
understand what
yeah.
you're saying in that it's kind of weak, you know.
Yeah, like it just feels weak because I feel like the first example is just so strong, and like that's what I'm having a hard time with because once you do get to the climax, like I really do not like Benoit Blanc's like whole conclusive monologue that he does because I just think it's the worst idea of what I think Ryan Johnson thought the franchise or what Ryan Johnson thought people thought the franchise was, which was this title for the film that had so many different meanings to it that it had multiple layers. And he thought about that. He's just like, multiple layers. Onion. Wait a second. A story is like an onion. You keep pulling back the layers, and every time you flip past a page, you find out something new about a person. Who would have fucking thought? Um, I feel like the film just gets so caught up in the idea of the glass onion, and like I understand why, but I think Benoit himself, he doesn't need to. Like I get why Miles Braun and all the other characters with being at the bar with the sign and all of that, like it means something to them. But like for Benoit Blanc to like go on this whole like fucking tangent about this glass onion, like I get it, it makes sense, but it just feels like the film is trying to be smarter than it needs to be. When I feel
Yeah,
like the first film. That's the thing. I feel like he thinks the first film was being smart when I just thought the first film was just witty. If that makes sense.
yeah. I mean, I definitely think in the last two, Ryan Johnson kind of gets caught up in his own process and trying to make these two movies be like similar to the structure of Knives Out, but not really hitting the mark as much as because I don't know. There's Knives Out feels very much like the lightning in the bottle situation, and that so much of it feels kind of incidental and calculated at the same time. And I think these two are trying to be too calculated and be like, oh, this is really smart, this is really clever, in trying to like pull one over the audience and subvert expert. It's the same reason people don't like The Last Jedi. You know what I mean? It's but I mean, that being said, I'm not saying like these movies, all three of them are leagues better than The Last Jedi, but we don't have to get into that. I'm just
I'd
saying that
argue. I'd argue.
okay. I'm just saying, like that's sort of my example for why I think some of this doesn't work as well as it does. Because in Knives Out, there isn't an expectation of like of the franchise, but there is the expectation of like the genre. And I think the last two get muddled by the expectation of the franchise, and that people were like, "Oh, Knives Out was really fun and smart in a different way from your normal, genre for the whodunit mystery."
Yeah. And a part of this film that like doesn't bother me, I just really don't like any of the characters in particular. They're for me, they're all kind of like I don't want to say unbearable because they're not all unbearable. I like Ed Norton, like I wouldn't or Ed Norton in anything I'll like, but I guess I'll preface this. I'm really not a big fan of Janelle Monáe as an actress.
Mm.
Um, I I'm trying to say this without coming off like super negative because she's a very talented woman. I just don't think she's a good actress. And that's my problem with this is she's essentially the lead of the movie and
Mm.
I you can say no, but she's the lead outside of maybe Ed Norton. Benoit Blanc's just a side character. Or well,
I would argue
honestly,
he's more the focus
he's
of
more
this
of the
movie.
he's I don't, they give him more to do in this film.
Mm.
I don't know, bro.
I don't
Okay,
think he has more
I'm
to
not.
do. He just he
I don't
has
want to
he
bring up
has
the whole
we're
private life discussion
no no
right
no.
now.
I mean that like we're seeing a lot more of it through his perspective than the other two films, and I don't. The reason I
That's
don't
fair.
agree with calling um Helen the main character is because we don't really get introduced to her character until halfway through the movie. So I feel like calling her the main character is a little misleading,
I don't know.
even though as
You
much as
say
the
I think
film
you sit here
relies
say
on.
she's not the lead character, but then the film, I think the film tells us she is by the end, with Benoit not even being a part of the third act. Essentially, the dude just goes
Yeah.
out and smokes a cigar with the fucking hippie that's just randomly on the fucking island, while Helen and everyone else is destroying his house. Because I agree with what you're saying, but the third act becomes such around her character and everyone else, and puts Benoit to the essentially the back, that that's where I'm struggling to see like him as the main character, just because at least in the third, in not the third act, Jesus Christ, in Knives Out, I felt like even during his monologue he was still active in the final act, because once he did his monologue in Glass Onion, dude just fucked off, which is fine, but I don't know. I just don't view him as like the lead or main character in this. He could be a co-lead. I'd agree with
Yeah, let's.
that.
I guess we should call them co-leads, shouldn't we? Then.
Because I don't think he's a lead in the first one. I think he's a supporting cast.
Yeah, yeah, and I
Um,
like that about I like, and it's
I
something that I
agree.
think the third one does better in having him not be so center stage and having him be more of like the supporting catalyst behind the main character's journey.
And you could tell that in Craig's performance, I think, in this movie. He,
Mm.
for some reason, it just feels like he's trying to be funnier in this movie, or like he's trying to be like smirky a little bit more. He's trying to be more charming. Like it feels like he's just trying rather than it's coming naturally. I don't know if that makes sense, because in that first film, it just felt like just like smooth sailing for him. Like the dude was in character. He knew his stance. You knew what he wanted. He knew what he wanted to say. He knew what he wanted to do. Like the only time in Glass Onion you get that is when he unravels like the dinner murder mystery, which is a really good scene. But like I feel like that's the only time you really get Benoit Blanc. You get the monologue at the end, but like I said, I feel like the monologue gets so lost in its own analogy with the glass onion and the onion itself, that, dude, I've watched the movie 3 times, and I keep like, I understand the general idea of the onion, but I'm like, by the end of that monologue, I'm like, dude, what was he going on about? Holy shit. But I feel like I'm definitely in the lesser group on that one, because I know this film is heavily loved for some reason.
I mean, it's not. I don't think it's as beloved as the first one for
I don't
sure.
know, dude. I see way more people talking about Glass Onion than Knives Out, and it bothers me.
I don't know. I listen. This movie is good. It's definitely not as good as Knives Out. I have issues with it. It not enough to really like make me not enjoy the movie. Like we've kind of been harping on like the negatives, but yeah, I Daniel Craig is still really good. I like Janelle Monáe in this movie. I think the cast is good. Some of the characters aren't really that interesting. Like I don't really care about Kate Hudson's character. She's kind of annoying. Not the performance,
Just the
just the
characters, just
character,
written so
and she
fucking
doesn't
annoying.
really mean much of anything by the end. And same
Her
with
assistant,
well, yeah, her assistant and Madeline Klein's character, and
Whiskey,
yeah.
Leslie O'Donnell, bro, Catherine. Like even the people that are connected to Miles Braun, like Leslie O'Donnell and Catherine Hahn, it feels like they don't even get enough screen presence for me to feel like their anger against Miles
Yeah.
too, because like I just don't like any of the characters in this movie. And like not in the way that the first film does it, where you're actively rooting against them. They're just annoying to watch in this film. And I think that's the biggest gripe I have towards it. I like Edward Norton, he's great, but like I'm sorry, he's the most obvious fucking killer of all time. Like, bro, it's Edward Norton. The dude is literally typecasted at this point in any role where he has to get angry or be violent, or just be like an antagonistic role. Catherine, like, that's the thing. All of these people are good, but I'm sorry, you can't sit here and try to make me not laugh at how stupid Dave Batista, being a Twitch YouTube gamer and a men's rights activist, is. Like, it's stupid because of the way he plays it too, as an absolute meathead, and the same goes towards Kate Hudson. Like, she's an absolute fucking ditzy hot supermodel who's a racist. Like that, and I think that's what happens with all of these characters is they just come down to three character traits
Yeah, I do think
and nothing more.
the side characters in this one are a lot less subtle in terms of their characterization. But anyways, that aside, I still think the movie looks good, and I like I kind of like the direction that the plot goes in, even if it's a little muddy at times. But anyways,
Damn, you just said something that I'll twist your nipples with this one. I think Glass Onion is the worst shot of the three.
no. You're
No, like
correct.
no, no, no,
You're no,
no.
I
Like,
don't
no,
I
no,
don't
no,
think
I get what you no, I get
that's
what
not a
you're
hot
trying to
take.
say. I get what you're saying. What I am trying to say is there's an underlying message to that.
Which
I'm
is what?
I'm just not impressed with the way this film was shot. Like, it felt generic in terms like of
I
that
mean,
first one.
I think there are moments in this, like it's kind of half and half. Like there are scenes where I'm like, oh, that was really a fun way of doing that, and then there's others where I'm like, this isn't really that all that. But the third one, I was surprised by the lighting of the third one. I'll say that.
Okay, do you
Um,
want to get into the third
yeah,
one then?
yeah.
All right, sweet.
So you hated it.
Yeah, bro, I actively do not like it. I feel like I this is going to come off harsh, but I this is a film that I feel like would waste your time if you watched. And like, listen to my argument, and I think this is a fair argument coming from me because an hour into the film, I texted you the fucking ending of the movie. Almost like,
Okay. Well, hold on. No, you gave me three guesses, and yes, two of them were correct. But you know, I don't know. I feel like you can kind of tell where it's going, and but I don't know. I There's something about this one that I feel the intent with it was a little more. What's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. I can understand what the direction that he was going in, even if I don't think it's as well done in terms of like story. Like I like the main character. He's not as interesting as Marta or Helen though.
I don't know. I find him more interesting than Helen. I Helen is
I don't
such
know.
a
I
bare
liked his.
character.
What's that?
Helen just felt like such a bare character to me. That's my issue. Is at
Mm,
least fucking what's his name had some depth to him.
mm.
Trying to like find his character name.
I don't know. I feel
That's
like this
good.
spends this one like did I can't remember if I said this off podcast or with like during the recording again. But my thing was that like I thought this movie was a lot longer than it was, and I didn't realize until I went back to go watch Knives Out and Glass Onion that they all kind of have like the same runtime. But this one you really feel like there's a lot of wasted time, specifically in the beginning. It kind of has a similar structure, but it's not about like it's not really about like changing the conflict or the twist um mid like mid film either, you know what I mean. Anyways, it's just that it has this weird framing device that I don't really think was needed, and then we have so much time dedicated to stuff happening that isn't really related to the murder, and the murder just happens too late again, and this time Benoit Blanc doesn't get introduced into the story until like 45 minutes into the movie, and that is just wrong.
It's literally one of the worst aspects of filmmaking. I hate when it comes to writing is having a character not doing voiceover like you're telling a story, but making that an entire section of your film just feels lazy
Yeah.
because to me, instead of it being a narrative device, it feels like the film is just describing to the audience what's happening rather than having the characters, like in the first one, kind of explain their stances and their viewpoints. And as the audience, we could put it together by how, like, this person says this about that person, but then that person would say something totally different about what they just said about themselves, about that other person. And so I just sit here and I'm like, damn, bro, this is really just unfucking interesting. I just don't
Yeah.
care.
The stuff with like the establishing like stuff with him going to the church and interacting with all of them, it's too much. Like I kind of got the gist of it by, the 15-minute mark. And then there was just so much of it. Like I feel like if it started with the murder and then, Benoit came in and what's his name is the main
Rev
suspect.
Judd Duplantis
Uh
Duplantis. I'm definitely not pronouncing his last name right.
where is it?
Duplantis.
I think that's right.
Duplantis. Like I keep
Yeah.
saying it like I'm saying it wrong, but it doesn't sound right.
Mm. But then I think because it's I don't know. I just this one I think is a little less justified in like the switches and perspectives and stuff. Like at least in the second one, it's kind of about recontextualizing like information that was established previously. This one I don't think does as good of a job, and I just really wish that it had started with Judd coming in and having that first sort of like standoff with all of them, and then we got into um immediately into the murder. Judd is the main suspect. Benoit comes in. Then he can have him sort of, go back and explain some stuff that was left out of the prologue. I don't know, just so it feels like we're progressing more through things, and also we're not wasting as much time waiting to get to the murder. Because like we all knew going in that it was going to be the priest, Josh Brolin's character, and there's only so long I can just be like, oh, this dude needs to die, and we need to like get to like the meat of the story, because it's just it feels like little to nothing happens in this movie, but then there's a lot of like emotional stuff going on that I don't think works as well as it maybe could have. Like I like the more dramatic approach. I just think it could have been, reworked a little bit in terms of like the structure of the story to make it land harder, because when you're watching the whole movie and you kind of feel like time is being wasted a little bit, and you finally get to the the ending of the movie and you're like, "Oh my god, there's 30 minutes left and we haven't even started the like ending monologue from Benoit." And it's just that's my main problem with the movie.
Yeah, I guess I just going off what you were just saying, I just wasn't expecting Benoit Blanc to kind of take such a back seat in this movie, and to kind of it being a Josh O'Connor film to some extent. And like that's another thing is like I like the cast. Like I like Josh O'Connor, I like Glenn Close, I like Josh Brolin, Mila Kunis, Jerry Renner, whatever. I like Kerry Washington. Kaylee's like, bro, I didn't know Kaylee Spaney was in this, but
Is she the cripple one?
yeah. Do you know who she is? Like, what she's been in? She was in the newest Alien film.
I think the only thing that I've seen her in was that awful Pacific Rim sequel.
I forgot she was in that actually.
I know she's been in stuff like she was in that Civil War, and yeah, she was in Alien Romulus, but I don't think I'm familiar with her work.
But like, bro, this film also's got Thomas Hayden Church, who they absolutely fucking wasted, and Jeffrey Wright. Like, dude, what? It's just very confusing, the narrative choice, which I don't think it's bad, but I appreciate it in the fact that Ryan Johnson's willing to try different things. I
Yeah.
just think this one kind of missed for me. I like the gothic, like neo gothic vibe of it. Like it felt cool, and I think it's really well shot. But this one is, in my opinion, definitely the one that suffers the most from not the best writing.
Yeah.
Um, Daniel Craig also just feels like he's kind of sleepwalking through this movie. I mentioned this to you before, but like he just seems really uninterested in being here. And personally, it makes me not really want to watch him in this because it seems like he doesn't even want to be figuring any of this out. It really feels like Josh O'Connor's the only one who wants to figure this out. I feel like Daniel Craig is just fine with everyone just being like, yeah, it's Josh O'Connor. Cool, just fuck him. Throw him in jail.
I mean, I didn't really get that sense. I just feel like he doesn't really have as much to do because we're relying so much on um uh what's his name? Judd's perspective of things. Um yeah, I don't know. I still think they're putting in good performances, and I kind of do like the dynamic when they are being a little more like witty with each other. Like when they first meet and they're having that conversation about religion, that's really fun. But then it kind of takes a back seat. Um and then there's I don't know. I feel like there's a little too much melodrama in terms of like Judd, you know, constantly sort of changing his mind about what he wants to do, and like, oh, I want to solve this murder. No, I now I know I don't, or whatever. I don't know. Some of it feels a little all over the place, and yeah, Mila Kunis in this movie is just a
A
waste.
stiff fucking piece of wood, bro.
Yeah, and
Literally.
I
Like I had
Jeremy
no
Renner too.
enjoyment
Like,
figuring out who the killer was, by the way. I actively didn't want to know who it was. Like when a film does that to me, I'm like, damn, bro, what the fuck is going on?
I do also think it gets a little too wrapped up in like the like religious symbolism stuff. Like I think the motivation behind the murder makes sense. It takes so much to get to that conclusion that it kind of feels like it's not
Well,
as
the film
smart
just
or interesting.
it just feels like it meanders before it gets to the point it wants to make
Mm,
about like the whole religious aspect of it all. Because I'll be honest, halfway through, it's about like their third fucking conversation about Christianity, uh, being an atheist, whichever one it was, and I'm just sitting here like, okay, guys, I fucking get it. Like, fucking Benoit doesn't believe. Judd used to be a fucked up guy, feels really bad, and needs something to save him. Like, I get it. I just don't think this is the film that I wanted from a Knives Out type movie. When honestly, like you say what you want about the people who died in the last two films, I could really care one less of a shit who killed Jefferson Wicks because of how much of a shitty character he was.
that's
And
fair.
like I think that's another part of me is I actively hated the person who died so much that I kind of just didn't care enough who murdered him because I already knew their reasoning would probably be good enough. Yeah, so I'm just sitting here like maybe this guy did deserve to die. You know?
I think by the end, it's more about like wanting Judd to get out of this trouble that he's in because everyone thinks it's him. I think like the only thing about the ending that doesn't really work for me is that it has this weird like Benoit's getting started on his whole like climactic monologue, and then he just stops and is just like, I can't do this, and you're just like, what? Like my thing is that if you weren't going to do a monologue, then you shouldn't have like tried to get it started only to like be
Say
like,
like,
psych,
I don't know what's going on.
we're not going to do the monologue, and then have Glenn Close come in and be the reveal and stuff. Like I feel like that could have like I like the like I like the conversation she has with Judd like right before she dies and everything. It's just that it really did annoy me that it had taken so long for us to get to that point, and then all of a sudden Benoit was like, you know what, psych, I'm not going to do the monologue.
Well,
whatever.
he said it was to like trick her out because he knew she'd give herself up. And I sat there and I'm like, what gave you the fucking clue she would do that, my guy? Like because I'm also kind of confused how like all of that came to the conclusion that it did, because like I said, I'm just like kind of dumbfounded the way everything kind of unfolded. And part of that is going to like the way Judd kind of experienced the film. And this is the part that like I really don't like is when you're experiencing the narrative from his perspective, they treat it almost like a supernatural suspense thriller. But then when you get the actual story, it's so far from what like he like saw and what we saw as the audience that I'm just kind of confused like what was really going on through some of the movie. Like when Josh O'Connor's like going through the woods and seeing Jefferson Wicks, I'm like, okay, like did he get like jacked up on like some drug? Did someone drug him, or like did he get knocked out like with the punch? And like why did he picture murdering Samson Holt only for it to actually be Jeremy Renner? Like all of that just felt really weird and misleading for no reason because they couldn't figure out how to mislead you like I think it does so well in the first one.
Yeah.
It,
Yeah.
it annoyed me because like I'm sitting here like, bro, why is this happening? Why? It annoyed me.
Yeah, I don't know. I really want to like this movie a lot more, but it is a little bit more of a struggle than even Glass Onion. You like at least in Glass Onion, I can kind of get behind the character dynamics. I don't think a lot of the character, like the sort supporting characters, the list of the line of suspects really works as well in this one, and I think their dynamic with each other isn't as strong as well. I feel like them being against Judd could have been used a lot better, and they don't really factor much into the plot by the end, and the eventual like murder. Like you have the whole thing about Psy being what's his name's son that doesn't really end up mattering at all. I just feel like
Who's like the adopted child of Kerry Washington because the father just gave like this 9-year-old kid to his 18. Like it's such a weird context without giving
yeah.
any context. Like
And then Jeremy Renner is
I'll
just kind of really
bro,
bland in
didn't
this
he own
movie.
that app one time?
We don't need to
I'm
talk
sorry,
about
that
it.
was a joke. That was just a bad joke, guys.
But yeah, I don't know. I just I the it didn't really feel like, in the last two, you kind of felt like it could have been any of them who committed the murder, but in this one, it's really just like like you were saying, there's not as much enjoyment in figuring out who it is. While I like who it actually was and the motivation behind it, it doesn't feel as fun getting to that conclusion. Um, but
Like, bro, okay, this is a fucking tweet about Wake Up Dead Man. A tweet review. Wake Up Dead Man is Josh O'Connor's first lead role in a big movie, and it's a genuine movie star performance. He is in almost every scene, is forced to play a huge range of emotion, and is utterly charismatic regardless of what he's asked to do. Whatever it is, he's got it. Unlike the leads in the earlier Knives Out, Father Judd is angry, prickly, and risks not being likable, which I highly disagree with. A priest fraught with guilt and confusion. Definitely not confused, but definitely guilt ridden. He's a complex guy, and Josh O'Connor not only nails the range, he keeps us on his side. It's a deceptively tricky part, and he nails it. Don't know if I agree with that. Josh O'Connor is consistently one of the best things, if not the best thing in every. Okay, that's just like a thing about Josh. I don't really give a shit
I
about.
mean, I like him in the role. I like his character. I think by the end of it,
I
you're
like
rooting
his
for his
story.
journey.
Yeah,
Yeah, in his story. It just, you kind of have to wade through a lot of like, you know, odd and weird stuff that doesn't really work as well to get to it. And I just feel like there's a lot of stuff that could have been trimmed out. Like I get that these movies are kind of built off of like the whole ensemble thing, but you don't really feel the ensemble stuff working in this movie as much. And I definitely feel like it could have worked as more of like a tighter like cast, like a smaller cast.
Which I find ironic because Glass Onion and Wake Up Dead Man have smaller casts than the first film in terms of like the people involved with the mystery going on.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. I just my thing is just again, you're seeing Ryan Johnson get caught up in what he thinks the franchise is. Like I like that he's like you said before, he's trying new things, but I don't think he's trying the right new things. And making this more of a drama doesn't really work as well as I think he thought it would. And I think at a certain point, there does become a bit of a formula to these movies, as much as the first one was so much about subverting the formula. And I just think there needs to be something different in the next one, if there is a next one. And I would like there to not focus as much on like um the A-list names attached to it.
Yeah, I agree. And to go back to your point before about the ending and like Judd's story arc, what I'll say is like something I did enjoy as like someone who's an atheist. There was something kind of profoundly warming with the final interaction between Judd and
Martha.
Martha. Yeah, I'm like, dude, why can't I remember Glenn Close's name? Because I don't know. I like the way the movie portrayed Judd as the priest that people need,
Yeah.
and there's something about that idea that made him comforting her much warming as like the way like I've always kind of viewed church and like priests and all that through like my own upbringing and shit like that. So I'm not a big like religious film fan just because I find them to be quite boring and I don't believe in any of it. So, but at the same time, I think the film did something interesting that at the end had me thinking. I'm not saying I'm thinking about becoming a Christian, but it gave me that kind of warmth that I feel like people describe to me when they talk about what
Their
religion
faith.
gives to them and their faith.
Mm.
And there is a part of that at the ending that I do think makes up for a little bit of that bland story in the beginning because it's like that saying it's not about the ending but the journey of how you get there. And I
Oh
think
yeah, it's not the destination, but the
yeah, and I think his journey of becoming the priest that people need after killing a guy, I think there's something nice about that. That the second film I think is heavily missing, which is part of my problem. Is just a bunch of rich people fucking each other over at the end of the day. This one it comes more grounded and much more personable, and makes me think about something that many films don't make me really think about too often, which I do like.
yeah. Yeah, I did like the approach to religion in this movie. I like that it's not about, you know, it's not really about them finding or losing their faith. It's just more about him navigating this weird uh social group, I guess, and trying to figure out the best way to fulfill his purpose.
Well, I thought it was really interesting at the beginning when Langstrom sent him to the one church that indirectly brings out the side he's been trying to hide. And
Mm,
so I really liked seeing him juggle with that in the beginning before the father or Wicks does die because
yeah,
I definitely think that gives not really good motivation for him being the killer, but just for him becoming the priest that the town needed and the people needed because of how overtly like obnoxious and hateful Wicks was that brought out the worst in Nate Sharp, Dr. Nate Sharp, which I'll be honest, I don't know what the whole running joke is with Jeremy Renner in these last two films,
Oh,
but I want someone to let me in on it because I don't get it.
yeah, I forgot about that in Glass Onion, and when I was watching it
So
earlier,
did I, and I saw them like, what
I
the
was
fuck?
kind of just like, so how does that work now that he's an actor in the next one? I don't know. It's just really weird. I really wish Jeremy Renner wasn't in this movie. Um,
He, it's not even because like of who he is either, like his acting. I just don't think he fit this role.
I don't think he did either. I don't know. I didn't really feel like his performance added anything to it that wasn't already in the writing and that any other actor couldn't have done.
Bro, it's literally three notes: drunk, doctor,
Simp.
wife left with kid. That's literally it for 2.5 hours, and there's nothing deeper than that. And it's just like, brother, what are you doing? What'd you feel about like the harlot whore stuff?
I actually liked that stuff. Like that's the kind of background stuff that I was intrigued by, and I love the way that it's shot too.
Yeah,
And I think by the end, like that's something that you come to realize, like this character that you've been told so much about, everyone was kind of like, being very untruthful about it and like what it really was about. And I do like that, that's the part that like I said earlier, Glass Onion does a really good job of recontextualizing information. That's something that this movie, like at least with those scenes in particular, is done really well. But there's not a lot of it in here.
yeah, I agree. But I definitely think I am a Josh O'Connor fan, and I think he
This is the only
does.
movie of his I've seen him in.
Dude, I think you got to see Challengers. He's really
I do
good
have
in
to watch
it.
that one.
Um, I think he does enough with what he's given. I
Mm,
I'm not sure if I fully like what he does though. Like a very kind of angsty, energetic man, which kind of just comes and goes. And for me, it feels like he's like popping in and out of the character a little bit and never truly knows what he wants to do
mm.
with Rev Judd Duplanticity. But that's just me. I like you, Josh. Please don't like get me banned on Twitter. However, do you have any final notes before we get into our ratings?
I don't think so.
All right. I have my letterbox up, so I'll start. I didn't have a review like a written review for Knives Out just because I think it's peak. So I give it a 5 out of 5. Ding ding ding. We have to get like a buzzer. I think I said this last time for when we do five out of fives. Um, Glass Onion, I gave 2.5 out of 5. And my review, the Glass Onion brings tears to my eye. Not my eyes, my one eye. Um, and then Wake Up Dead Man, 2 stars out of 5. And then I my review. Daniel Craig participated in acting during some scenes, which was pretty entertaining.
Wait, you gave it 2 stars? I thought you gave it 1.5.
I did, but I'll be honest. Our conversation made me enjoy it a little bit more, so I nudged it up half a star like 10 minutes ago.
Interesting. All right. Mine, I gave Knives Out also 5 out of 5. I did change my previous ratings. So I think originally I had it at a 4.5, but I think it's a 5. Um, Glass Onion, I gave a 4. As
No
much
way,
as
bro.
as much as we spent the entire
Oh my
time kind of
god.
harping on the things that
Bro,
we don't
revoke
like
your
about it,
filmmaker card.
I
Revoke your filmmaker card.
I think overall it's still a good, fun, interesting mystery by the end. Um, and then Wake Up Dead Man, I gave a 3.5, which is not bad, but also not good either. It's just kind of like in the middle of like, this is entertaining. There's a lot of stuff that I just feel is, this movie overall, I think, is overstuffed. It could have been, there's a lot of stuff that could have been trimmed. And again, similar to Glass Onion, could have been restructured to make it flow a little better.
I can't, bro. Literally, Glass Onion loses a star just for the makeup done on Edward Norton's face. I'm sorry, like, like it's
Calm
bad.
down, calm down.
Okay, okay,
We
Leo.
agreed on the one that mattered. Okay.
No, I do. I'm glad we agreed on the one that mattered. But Leo, what are we watching next week?
Oh shit! I forgot to pull that up.
You son of a bitch, bro. We've been so good at
Oh
this.
fuck.
Oh no.
Okay, so next week we're talking about Avatar 1 and 2,
Oh fuck, bro.
which
This is gonna be a lengthy motherfucker.
yeah, it is.
Ah.
Yeah, so yeah, stay tuned for that, guys.
Yeah. I can't believe the new one's coming out too soon, like in a week.
Yeah, I honestly I was expecting there to be a longer wait in between the second and third one, but I mean, I liked Way of Water, so I'm kind of excited to see this new one.
Yeah, thank God for the visual effects. I'll just say that. But
You know, it would be funny if we made this next episode our shortest one, given the fact that both movies are like 3 hours.
or like it's combined 8 hours or some shit. Like
Yeah.
ironic. But without further ado, let us know down in the comments below what you think of the Knives Out trilogy. We'll see you on the next one. Peace.